We are live. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. I am your host, Blake Ruffino. This is Are You Serious Sports? Like we do every Tuesday, no matter what I do, I can prep my ass off for the live show. Somehow, some way, Facebook won't connect, which is quite honestly our biggest platform. So we are a little late tonight. I don't know what to tell you. Guys, I can't. There's nothing I can do at this point. Absolutely nothing. I've tried multiple streaming units, but it's okay. We're here. We're live. We're in action. Tonight will be a good one as we have a jam-packed show. Last night, we talked why I believe the defense had the potential, the LSU defense had the potential to be the best in the SEC. Tonight, we will flip the script, and we will go on offense. And I think it's going to be just as good as it was last night. Last night was one of our bigger shows that we've ever had, especially I mean, guys, it was really big on all three platforms from what we're normally used to doing. But it's okay. It's all right. We do have a good show in store for you. Graham Coffey, you can follow him at Dog Out West from and we'll let him plug all of his stuff. I'm a little bumfuzzled just a tad because I'm having to work through everything. Guys, I'm telling you, Tuesdays are the absolute worst days on the planet. But from at Dog Sports, you can follow him there. He's really been on this SEC expansion talk. He talked about how Texas and Oklahoma more than likely will be in the SEC in 2022. He got some ridicule on that, and then all of a sudden people start firing off saying it's more than likely that Texas and Oklahoma will be in the SEC in 2022. I got to talk to him. He's been on top of it. He's going to give us some great insight into everything that's going around in the SEC, as we do every day on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Hashtag Ask Blake. And then we'll get into some LSU recruiting. And Jake Crane, our good friend Jake Crane, is reporting today that he is hearing from some good sources that the Pac-12 and the Big 12 will merge together. So we'll talk on that. As guys, I don't care what you believe. All of this is going to affect college sports and college football. This, as we know it, is probably coming to an end as we know it. So let's get to a couple of comments before we get started. Little Boosie badass, and we all got some ratchet in us. Ba-ba-ba-ba-da-da. Little Boosie's in the house via the YouTube. I don't know if it's the real Little Boosie, but if it is, Boosie, we'd love to have you on the show to talk some LSU. It'd be great. PCG on YouTube says, who hates Texas already? That would be me. And I'm sure along with a lot of others. He also, little Boosie also says, Rudy Poo Candy Ass. It's Facebook on Tuesdays. Travis says, let's go. Ryan says, let's go. So does Kenny. So does Tony. So does Kenny Futch, Craig Schilling, Ray Watt, and Robert Plaisance. So we do have a lot of people inside here. And a mosquito. Guys, I'm telling you, dude, I can't wait for the new studio. Bro, this shit's going to be done when the new studio's in there. And Eric Wright sends us some stars via Facebook. Eric, I greatly appreciate you doing that. So let's do this. Let's pay some bills. We'll talk about LSU offense. Then we'll have Graham Coffey on with us. But none better than our good friends over at GM Barndo & Sons. BetOnline.ag. With over 63 years of experience, there's nobody more equipped to service your vehicle or any vehicle that you have than GM Barno & Sons. RV repair, big rig overhauls, motorhome chassis, routine maintenance, tire rotations, tire sales. No job is too big or too small over at GM. Give them a call today at 225-664-9992. That's 225-664-9992. And tell them your good friend, Mr. Blake Ruffino, over at AYS, sent you all by. Go see him at 2500 Florida Boulevard in Denham Springs, Louisiana. And, guys, I've been telling you so much about betonline.ag. If you're on your mobile device after the show, go to betonline.ag. You want to do some SEC bets? You want to do some LSU betting? You got to head over to betonline.ag. Guys, sign up today using that mobile device. You'll get 50% off that first welcome bonus. You want to bet on the NFL. You want to bet on the NFL MVP. You want to do parlays. Whatever you want to do, BetOnline is set up for you to do it. Get over there today. Let them know your good friend Blake Ruffino sent you by. It's betonline.ag. Betonline.ag. Let's get this party started. Right out the gate, Jacob Samuel says, already dealing with Texas people here in the DFW. Yeah, so we'll talk about this a little bit more with Graham Coffey in a little bit. Guys, I can't stand Texas. The simple nature got your ass. The simple nature of that they are so cocky and arrogant since they haven't won a national title since 2005. It baffles me. It baffles me, the arrogance, the cockiness. They are the guys at the bar who talks all that shit. You know who I'm talking about. The guy at the bar that talks all that shit. Yeah, I could beat this guy up. Yeah, I used to fight back in the day. Yeah, I used to train MMA. They probably got the tap out T-shirts on in the bar. But then when the real dude comes in, when the real big stick comes in, and they say, oh, you can fight? What about fighting me? They cowered like the B words that they are. Bro, I cannot wait for the day that Texas Longhorns come to Baton Rouge and we beat the dog shit out of them. I never thought I'd say it. About to get to the offense. Never thought I'd say this. Guys, Texas fans are more cocky and arrogant than Alabama fans, and they don't have the national titles. You know, when you're on top, when you're the king, it just kind of feels like you can look. Alabama fans can kind of say what they want sometimes, right? Like maybe not so much sometimes to LSU, but to everybody else, they can say really anything and get away with it. Texas is back because they're in the SEC. No, they're not. One good reason as to why they won't be able to beat teams like LSU as we did the defense last night. Let's flip over to the offense. So let's talk some LSU before Graham gets in here. I mentioned this last night, and I'm going to say it again in reference to the defense. The offense has the talent. And it's not really even close, but they have the talent to be 11-1. They have the talent to be 10-2, and they have the talent for the floor to be 9-3. So let's look around. Where does LSU have the holes offensively? Some will say running back, some will say wide receiver, maybe a second. But guys, look at the individuals that they brought in. Ty Davis-Price, John Emery, Amari Goodwin, Corey Kiner. Now, who is that second receiver going to be? Doesn't this feel to you guys like 2019? You got Justin Jefferson, you ain't got nobody else. Yeah, you got five-star Terrace Marshall, but you ain't got nobody else. And then by a guy by the name of Jamar Chase comes on the scene, Clyde Edwards-Helaire comes on the scene and blows it out of the water. LSU is that team. There's always that team. Maybe in that 1 year that you know nobody's really talking about, but some experts are talking about saying, "Hey, bro, like you better not look over LSU." And offensively, I think that's where the defense is the group that people know that they have the talent, that people know that LSU has the talent, which is so crazy because of what they did a season ago. Like you can look across the board and what they did in the last half part of the season. Offense seems to be from the position group and position groups that people have their most questions on, which is a little bit crazy. Everybody beats down on me about this offensive line. Guys, I implore you, I beg you, go watch the last 4 or 5 games of the season. Your national champion winning Alabama Crimson Tide got busted up on a long run by John Emery. Why? Because they ran an inside zone. John Emery made one cut, got down the sideline, and he was gone. Offensive philosophy and offensive scheme last year. I love Steve Ensminger more than anybody. So I don't mean this in a negative way. Steve Ensminger in the running game, quite honestly, it was a little bit too much for him. The things that they were doing on the offensive line, pulling a guard, getting away from the things that they had success with. So, for an example, against Alabama, you run an inside zone with John Emery. He takes it to the hizzy. Like, guys, think about this. He takes it to the house, and you don't run that again. You don't run the inside zone from that formation. You don't flip it and run it again all game. Well, Blake, you're getting beaten down. Do whatever that's going to get you points and get you to where you're going to score. Doesn't matter that you're getting beat down. Score. Keep yourself in the game, and you don't run it again. Why? See, the funny thing and the most naive thing, let's put it like this, and I wasn't intending on doing this, but I want to do it right now. LSU versus Alabama 2020. I want to just pull up the rushing stats. Here's the lie. Here's the lie. Let's look at LSU. John Emery, 7 carries, 79 yards, 11.3 yards per carry for a touchdown. Guys, that's insane. That man only got 7 carries and had 79 yards for 11.3 yards per game and a touchdown. Let's go over to Florida. LSU versus Florida 2020. By the way, that's over the 5 yards per carry. Yeah, I mean, look, you got Chris Curry, 17 carries, 64 yards at 4 yards per carry. So you're not getting the 5 yards per carry, but Chris Curry's no longer here. You had 2 running backs that wind up not doing anything, and then you have I shouldn't say not doing anything, but getting hurt, John Emery being one of them, and you have Max Johnson, who some of those are a little bit of sacks, but also giving you 52 yards. Here's the thing about this stat. Because I told you in every single game other than one that LSU had a running back that had over 5 yards per carry. Ty Davis-Price, 8 carries, 55 yards. And everybody wants me to believe that the offensive line at LSU couldn't run the football last year. Then how do you come up with the argument that you have John Emery for 10 yards per carry and against a national champion, and you have Ty Davis-Price running for 5.9 yards per carry against Florida, and you can't run the football? So when people talk about the offensive line, I look at those stats. I watch the game and say, bullshit. As my grandpappy would say, bullshit. It's a lie. It's a stone cold lie. LSU is going to be able to run the football, especially when number 14's behind center. You got to be able to be mobile in this RPO game, or it's not going to work. It's not going to work. Go to the first game against Mississippi State. I swear to God, this goddamn mosquito is driving me nuts. Guys, I'm telling you, Tuesdays are the weirdest shows we have. It's not close. It's not close. Anyway, you go to Mississippi State game 1. You know, Chris Curry had over 5 yards per carry. You can't run the football. The shit, I can't. You got to be more balanced. LSU's going to do that. So don't come at me anymore about the offensive line. I will have the entertainment conversation with you, however, about depth. Every team in not just the SEC, but the country are needing to have that conversation, right? Like, they have to have that conversation about depth on the offensive line. It's not just LSU. Let's get over to wide receiver. You got Kayshon Boutte. I mean, again, we know what Kayshon Boutte did in the last 2 games, especially. Look, 5 catches, 108 yards, 1 touchdown, 21.6 yards per catch against Florida. And then the next week you turn it over to Ole Miss, and he absolutely just wrecks shop and breaks an SEC record for yards in a single game. Kayshon Boutte wound up having 14 catches, 308 yards, 22 yards per catch, and 3 touchdowns. What people forget about that game, too, is Coy Moore had 6 catches for 63 yards, too. Guys, they have experience. They have talent. Here's another funny stat about the Ole Miss game. Trey Bradford, 9 carries, 53 yards, 5.9 yards per carry. So when I personally look at the offensive line and receivers that everybody has issues with, everybody seems to have issues with, I take a step back, and I ask myself, how are these stats even comparable? What game are you watching? When you got Trey Bradford getting the 9 carries for 53 yards, Josh Williams, a walk-on, 12 carries for 55 yards, Max Johnson, 14 carries, 45 yards, and 2 touchdowns. And I'm supposed to believe, for whatever reason, that LSU doesn't have the talent offensively. Here is what Mark Allen says. Is it Tuesday? Dude, I'm telling you, bro. I'm telling you, man. Anything that can go wrong is going wrong today. Every team that wins a national title. Let's look at teams that have in the SEC that have beaten Alabama, for an example. You have Cam Newton, Heisman Trophy winner. You have Johnny Manziel, Heisman Trophy winner. Yeah, you can talk about the Ole Miss quarterbacks that beat him. They're not Heisman Trophy winners, but you have Joe Burrow. What do those two right there have in common? They won national titles. You have to have extremely great quarterback play to win the SEC West. Not only in the West, but in the East, you have to have extremely good quarterback play. Look at Florida last season. Guys, Florida's defense was horrendous, and Kyle Trask led them to an SEC. By the way, I'd be trolling the Florida fans. I'm like, dog, the worst season that we've had in 20 years, and we put the smack it down on y'all's candy ass, they don't like me too much. Max Johnson, Miles Brennan is the only way that you're going to be able to win the SEC West. Whatever guy it's going to be. At this point, whatever guy it's going to be, one of those guys have to lead you. In the locker room, that's Max Johnson. All right, we're going to do this. We're going to get to our good friend Graham Coffey. He is here. He is live. Look, he's even saying he had a small tech issue. Guys, I'm telling you, Tuesdays, bro. It's nuts. It's crazy. Let's do this. We're going to get to a very quick break. I want to talk SEC expansion. Graham has been on top of it. He's broken some news. Guys, you're going to want to listen to him. How is it? I'm going to ask him, how is it going to affect LSU? We talked about that last night. So stay tuned. We're going to talk about that. Let's get this quick break. None better than a good friend, Mr. John Patton, over at GMFS Mortgage. Guys, are you thinking about buying a new home, saving money on the mortgage that you have now, even doing that cash out refi? The timing has never been better. Get in touch with John Patton from GMFS Mortgage today, 225-614-1234. That's 225-614-1234. Purchase, refinance, build, or renovate. GMFS has been changing lives since 1999, along with our good friend John Patton. Again, that's 225-614-1234. Tell me, good friend Blake Ruffino at AYS sent you on by. All right, we're joined by our good friend, Mr. Graham Coffey. Graham, dude, it's Tuesday. We always are having technical difficulties on a Tuesday. I'm glad you're here. What's going on tonight, my friend?
Man, I just was enjoying listening to you be a Florida Gator truther there before the break. I'm all for that.
As a Georgia fan, right? I mean, I'm sure you are.
Absolutely.
I mean, look, LSU going 5-5 last year. Florida still can't beat them. I mean, it's glorious, right? It's a glorious thing. Graham, look, let's start off here. I'll let you tell everybody where they can follow all your great stuff, but I got to start off with this. You have been all over this SEC expansion. Look, I'm going to be honest. When I was monitoring, reading the comments, was it 18, 19, 20 hours ago, you're saying that Texas and Oklahoma could be in the SEC by 2022. You took the punches. You took the ridicule. And as it always does, this morning you were proven right. What are you hearing? I'm going to give you the floor. What do you think? What are you hearing? And we'll start there, my friend.
Yeah, so the head of the University of Texas System Board of Regents, so not just for UT Austin, but the entire University of Texas system, is a gentleman who is a very big college football fan, a guy named Kevin Eltfe, and he kind of has taken on like mythical hero status, I think, within the Texas fan base over the last week, because he seems to be the guy pulling a lot of the strings behind the scenes and making a lot of this happen. But straight up, he's a Longhorn fan, and he is tired of seeing Texas kind of in a mediocre spot and sort of, being forgotten by the time we get to October and November every college football season. So he's been pushing hard to kind of make this expansion happen. The big kind of reason that a lot of people didn't believe that report when I first put it out, saying I thought Texas and OU would be in the conference for 2022, was because they're on the hook for like $150 to $160 million buyout with the Big 12, right? So the two things you have to remember: one, this is Texas. There's always going to be a surplus of money or some big money donors that can be drawn upon. But two, Texas has had this deal with the Longhorn Network for a long time, and that contract still has a lot of time left on it. So it really looks like that the money for that buyout is going to come from what's left on the 20-year, $300 million deal that they signed with the Longhorn Network about a decade ago. So, I mean, I think the question is, the only thing I think stopping them from being in 22 at this point is just like, will the SEC be able to get everything done in time? Because that changes scheduling. It changes, some of these teams like Georgia, like Alabama too, I believe, have home and homes with Texas and Oklahoma coming up over the next 5-10 years. So it's going to throw some of that stuff in flux. But we watched during COVID, right? Like we saw teams play games on 3-4 days notice. So It can be done. So it feels like that's kind of where everything's headed, that we're going to see OU and Texas in the league for 2022.
Yeah, and let's not look. That excuse that you got to schedule a game for 2072, okay, stop with the bullshit. I mean, excuse me for saying it.
No, yeah, you're right.
Stop with the bullshit. When you got Coastal Carolina and who do they play? Was it
BYU? Yeah.
BYU. When you have those two teams playing, I don't want to hear it anymore. Graham Coffey is joining us. Guys, we'll let him tell you everywhere you can follow his great stuff. If you have a question in the chat, hit us with hashtag Ask Graham. What do you think the SEC pumps the brakes a little bit? Because look, Oklahoma and Texas just filed to be in the SEC today. Do you think that they pump the brakes a little and find everything out? Or do you think, Graham, that over the last 6 to 8 months, the SEC has been working through this and they already have their ducks in a row? I kind of agree with you. I could see it going 2022, and you're hearing the sourcing, or 2023. Do you think that there's a chance that there's a step back here, or do you think that the SEC and Texas and Oklahoma are just full steam ahead and want to get this done as soon as possible?
My gut says that it's closer to full steam ahead. There's always going to be red tape on stuff like this and contracts and lawyers that have to get involved. But the reality here is that these conversations, like you said, they've been going on since late last year. And, there's even been some people out there that have alluded to the possibility that, when Steve Sarkisian came and took that job and was recruiting assistant coaches out of the SEC that really didn't want to leave the Premier College Football League in the sport, that, this was kind of something that was being discussed and sort of teased to some people as like, hey, you're going to come back to the SEC in a year or two, come on down and let's do this together. So there's always something that could happen, right? So I never want to speak in absolutes on something like this, but it feels like, Texas and Oklahoma have made that break from the Big 12. They're not going to want to live with their ex for, any amount of time. Yeah. I mean, like, no one wants to live with their ex for 4 years. And that was my whole thing, especially yesterday when everyone was like, oh, it'll be 2025. And it's just like, let's look back in Missouri and Texas A&M when they came in the league. It was about 6 to 9 months after all these conversations and announcements and votes started happening. So I think we could see him in 22, 23 would be the latest, but we're certainly not going to be waiting till 2025, in my opinion.
So we do have a fan question, and Craig Schilling, who's a good friend of ours who does a lot for us here, he does ask this, and I kind of want to add on to this, Graham, but he says, hashtag Ask Graham, the biggest question is, how does this affect the addition of Texas Oklahoma impact recruiting? But I'm going to add on to that. So we're obviously a big Louisiana podcast, LSU podcast. a lot of people have been saying that they feel like LSU is the more impacted team in the SEC than anybody else. I kind of call that bullshit. I mean, you're going to see that on the field when you lay the smackdown on a team, right? Like if LSU beats Texas and Oklahoma in one season, recruits, regardless of NIL, you're more going to lean to a brand that's already winning. But what do you think? Do you think that this is going to affect a lot of teams, or do you think it's going to affect Texas and Oklahoma more? Like, hey, Oklahoma's winning a Big 12 conference every year. Obviously, it affects them more now coming into the SEC, right?
Right. I mean, like Oklahoma's been winning the Big 12 conference every year, like you said. But when they get into the playoff, right, like there's some issues in the defense. There's some issues on the front end. And that's ultimately where kind of things break down for them. And they've struggled to recruit certain positions, especially on the defensive side of the ball. I think that this probably helps them in the immediate. There's less building that has to happen for them to become, national champion. And there's a lot of people that think their defense is at that level already. Alex Grinch has done a really good job there as DC.
I agree.
So, I think for me, they might be my preseason national title favorite at this point.
Oh, wow.
But the thing I would say with Texas is I wrote a piece on it this afternoon. They've watched so many guys leave the state of Texas over the last, couple years, and really since the CFP era started. I mean, two years ago, you go and look and it's like A&M is signing 6 of the top 13 guys in the state of Texas. Alabama has dipped into Texas a lot. Excuse me. LSU is coming to Texas historically really well, especially down in South Texas in the Houston area. So I think that this, in the eyes of Texas, no pun intended there, but I think they look at it as like the reason we're not keeping these guys in state is because, they want to go play in the SEC, and who can blame them? More premier games. It's a lot more exciting than kind of playing that one big regular season game every year against Oklahoma when you're running the gauntlet of an SEC West and you're always in prime time, and you're going to have college game day there once or twice a year. So I think that it does affect LSU, but I think LSU at this point the brand is in a place nationally where LSU can go and recruit in a lot of different places. And,
right.
Being a Georgia guy, I've watched LSU come in and take lots of kids out of Atlanta and other parts of Georgia over the years, and did it with Arik Gilbert a couple of years ago. It didn't work out, but still it's evidence that, they can go in and get a 5-star prospect out from underneath Georgia's nose anytime they want, if, the circumstances are right. So I don't worry about LSU on the recruiting front. I do worry about Texas A&M just because it's the psyche part of it too, right? And it's just like there's all the shit talking happening already of like A&M being little brother again and all that, which I don't think if you follow them, it's fair to say that. But I think it'll help Texas, but ultimately Texas has been the 5th most winning team in the Big 12 over the last decade. It's going to take some cycles for them to build that program to where it needs to be, especially on the line of scrimmage to compete in the SEC.
I mean, hell, look how long it took A&M. I mean, yeah. Right? I mean, like, it's been 10 years. I mean, like, we're on the anniversary of that's how long it took them to get to where they are, a respectable team in the SEC West division and the SEC conference, or not SEC conference, the Southeastern Conference. I'm conferencing myself.
I know. It's a lot, isn't it?
Well, I get excited, because it is exciting, right? Like they are two brands. Let me two or three more questions I got for you here.
Yeah, absolutely. I got all the time in the world.
Oklahoma, like you talked about them being possibly your preseason champion. Why would they make that move though? Like if you're potentially, because we know what LSU did in 2019, getting close to $60 million for winning a national title in the college football playoff. Why do you make that leap? Like I get the money aspect of it, but if your goal is to win a national title, like, do you think that they have more to lose than Texas? Like, so we're always talking about Texas and nobody's talking about Oklahoma. They're just like kind of glad to be here, right?
Yeah.
Did they lose the most from all of this because they're winning? And I know I already asked that, but let's focus a little bit on them because what impact do you see that they have in all of this?
Yeah, no, it's a really good question, right? Because I think The appeal of Oklahoma right now to a 5-star recruit is you show up in the Big 12, you win the conference every year, you throw for 400 yards a game, and then you go to the college football playoff. And while that hasn't gone super well for them to this point, you got to think at some point they're going to break through and knock down that door. That's not going to happen every year in the SEC, right? Like they're not going to play for a conference title every year. They're certainly not going to win a conference title every year. And they're a good program. They may win one every 5 to 10 years or 5 to 6 years or 3 to 7 years, to be determined, right? But I think it hurts them, but I also think that the reality is that we're moving into a different era of college football. And this 12-team playoff, if we look at what's happened here kind of over the last 6 months with those discussions, you got to say Greg Sankey is a ruthless capitalist, right? Like he looked at it. Yeah, ruthless, man. Like he looked at it and was like, all right, everybody's, causing a storm because not everyone can be included in this playoff group of 5 once in. I'm going to make those concessions because I don't want to deal with this in court or wherever, or, in Congress, because that's kind of some of the stuff that was being threatened. And instead, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to let it be a 12-team playoff, and then I'm going to take a third of those spots every year. And so the amount of money that happens when you're talking about, four shares of a college football playoff buyout where, that CFP is probably going to be $1 billion plus contract to whoever buys it. It's a lot of money. And then, the SEC already, I think last year they doled out $45 million a school. When you add Texas and Oklahoma, and I think that's the other part, asking about the timing in 2022 and why would the SEC sort of bend over backwards to make it happen. Well, as soon as they get added into the conference, it causes a reset on all of these TV contracts. And so if the SEC wants to get out of the SEC on CBS sooner, they can go ahead and do that probably, and ESPN can buy those rights. But like you're looking at the potential of an extra, $10, $15, $20 million a year per a school. And then who knows with college football playoff shares pretty soon, the gap between an SEC team and an ACC team, maybe $30 million a year. And that's a lot to make up. So I think that's why, you've heard reports of Clemson kind of stomping their feet and trying to get the ACC to do something because everyone is sort of falling behind with this new, I mean, people are saying super conference. I think it's a fair term. I mean, even if it stays at 16 teams, if you look at the brands and who those teams are and what they've done over the past couple decades, I mean, it's tough to say that, maybe 5, 6, 7 of the top 10 teams in the sport are not in this league.
It's funny. Are you going to put in a group of 5 team in the playoff? Are you going to put Texas if they're the top 12 team? Are you gonna keep Oklahoma out? Let's just say hypothetically, Graham, you split the conference down the middle, and you have LSU possibly and Oklahoma in the West, and then you have Alabama, Georgia in the East. I mean, I'm speaking a whole bunch of hypotheticals. You mean to tell me you're going to keep those 4 teams out? They're not going to do that, and so I question a little bit if they're going if the college football playoff expansion. The playoff expansion has to take a step back because no one really knows what's going on with the conferences, right? Like that's a big question that I have is, do we take a step back there because Greg Sankey, Mosquito, Louisiana, bro, Louisiana. But do we take a step back there? We do have a question from Val Browning that I did want to get into with you too before we get you out of here. He says, #Ask Graham, is there any other schools possibly joining the SEC that you're hearing? West Virginia. So if you don't know Jake Crane from the J-Boy Show, he's talking. Yeah. He's heard that the Big 12 and the Pac-12 could possibly merge. Now, look, this dude doesn't miss, so I trust what he's getting. And then you leave West Virginia, who's on the East Coast. They're not going to go to the West. Do you think that there are other possible teams that the SEC could add here in the upcoming years?
Yeah, in the upcoming years, I do. I mean, I think I don't have anything firm enough to where I feel comfortable like saying saying any teams on the air, but I did get a text from, a very good, very strong SEC source that knows what happens in the league office last weekend. And he said flat out, like, we're a couple dominoes from the SEC becoming 24 teams, becoming its own kind of, well, and I mean, the words he uses, becoming its own division within college football, which,
nuts. So crazy.
It's nuts.
Graham.
No, and I mean, I grew up with, the 12-team SEC, and I remember watching, like, Jefferson Pilot with the three Daves, and it's like halfway snowy on the TV, and now you're talking about a multi-billion-dollar business, right? And so that's where we've come in 20 to 30 years. It's wild to think about, but I do think that, like, that would be a solution to the type of situation that I'm sure you've covered on this show, and I know a lot of people are concerned about. Under a 12-team playoff, we're taking the best teams, which are probably filled with the most number of guys that have NFL prospects.
Correct.
And they're going to go play 16, 17 games. That's not right. And so I think, we could look it up in a decade, and the reality is that some sort of super conglomerate is formed, and the SEC kind of has its own playoff that happens at the end of the season within its own conference, and maybe that's the national champion, or maybe that team goes and plays a team from another 24 team division, and that's it. But I do think ultimately we're looking at the group of 5 teams getting frozen out of the postseason conversation at some point, just because the money's not going to be there to keep up.
Last question, we'll get you out of here. Sometimes capitalism can be a bad thing to some extent. For example, if the SEC continues to add on, I want to see LSU, who's supposed to be going to play UCLA. I want to see that. LSU's never played in the Rose Bowl. Mm-hmm. I want to go to the Rose Bowl. It has a lot of feel to it because you have an Ed Orgeron who got shafted by the guys at USC, going back to those are the storylines I grew up loving in college football that I'm scared of, Graham, honestly, that we might not have. I don't think that Greg Sankey in and of himself is going to flip college football to a point where the SEC, I'm not going to say runs everything, but I'm sure they want to go out to California and beat the dog manure out of a USC or Oregon or whatever, right?
Sure.
But my question is, do you think that there is a chance that the SEC just doesn't really care anymore? Because, look, they see Mark Emmert in the Supreme Court getting his ass handed to him, and look, it's all holds bar now. Do you think that this could obviously hurt college football if they continue to add down the road?
I think it could. I also think it could help. I think we could find ourselves in a situation where we get more of those games, right? I mean, the game that I was most upset that we lost last year was the return trip that Texas was supposed to make to LSU, because there was so much bad blood and regionalism involved in that. I think college football is always going to have that unique regionalism to it, where you have all these people that are working in offices together in places like Atlanta and New Orleans and all over the country, and they think that their alma mater is better than your alma mater, and we're going to find that out on Saturday, right? So I worry about it just like you do, but I think that those big storylines will probably always be there, and who knows, man? I mean, the future reality of this may look like where the Pac-12 and the SEC, and this is not a scoop or anything like that. I want to be really clear. This is just a hypothetical, but maybe it looks someday like the Pac-12 and the SEC have a week where they have a crossover and their teams play one another. And I think we'd all be on board for something like that. Right. So what I think is happening is this effort. When you add 12 teams to the playoff, you do dilute the regular season and the meaning of the regular season on some level. And I'll argue that with anyone, anytime.
I 100% agree with you.
Yeah. And so, okay, well, if we're going to get, 9 conference games or 10 conference games, and it's going to be games like Texas LSU or Oklahoma Georgia Rose Bowl rematch. Like, there's a lot of good stuff there. There's a lot to be excited about, and so I'm hopeful that college football as a whole recognizes that the idea of the SEC SoCon Challenge Saturday in November every year, where Bama plays Charleston Southern. Like, I don't think people want to watch that.
The Citadel, right.
And Georgia does it too. I mean, I'm not throwing stones, but like, I've talked to national college football writers that like they take that weekend off because no one cares to cover that and talk about that and comment on Bama blowing somebody out by 60. So I think that it's going to be interesting, but I do think that bringing passionate fan bases together is why the SEC is so much fun. And I think that you've added 2 really passionate fan bases in Texas and Oklahoma. So
no doubt.
I'm not at that point yet where I'm like, oh God, we're ruining it. It feels weird. I'm a little uncomfortable with it, but I'm trying to like stay open because I think it could be really cool.
I just want to beat the dog shit out of Texas, bro. Like, I mean,
who doesn't, right?
Right. And so I'm okay with it. Give me 5-10 good years of laying the smack down, and I'm good with it. Graham, I agree with you. We align on a lot of stuff. Dude, keep doing the great stuff you're doing. Awesome follow. And to all the AYS Nation, tell everybody where they can follow you and all the work that you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. You can follow me on Twitter at Dog, DAWG, of course, Dog Out West. And you can also find me on dogsports.com. That's where I do all of my writing and have been publishing some of these updates to the Texas OU SEC drama throughout the past week. So thanks for having me on, man. I really appreciate it.
No problem, man. We'll talk to you soon. As always, you've been fantastic. We'll talk to you later. Have a good night, bud.
Absolutely. You too, man.
That is Graham Coffey. Guys, just amazing. Look, you need to go follow him. The dude's like legitimately breaking some serious shit. I mean, it's been phenomenal to see what Graham's been doing over the last, let's just call it a week. So great follow on Twitter. A lot of great articles he writes. Craig Schilling he says, now 11 wins in the SEC baseball will get you into the NCAA tournament. I mean, look, I know that could be a joke, but not really. Right? Like not really. Before we get on out of here, I want to give a quick shout out to our good friends over at Drake Williams Law Firm. DrakeWilliamsLawFirm.com, 985-386-7600. And our good friend, Mr. Richie Roche over at Roche's Lawn and Landscape, 225-937-7220. That's 225-937-7220. Tell them both that your good friend, Mr. Blake Ruffino over at AYS, sent you on by. Guys, before we get out of here, do us a favor by hitting the like and share, as we do always on Tuesdays, have some technical difficulties. Look, I want to talk about this last because Jake Crane, if you don't know who Jake Crane is over the J-Boy Show, he broke some news, but not completely yet. He kind of told you a little bit of what was going on behind the scenes. And to Graham and my point, look, this isn't just an SEC thing. I know that probably a lot of people are getting exhausted about the expansion talk, but this does affect all of college football. LSU is in the midst of that. What happens if the Big 12 and the Pac-12 do merge? If you didn't see it, Jake Crane stated that he's hearing from a reliable source in the Big 12 that there's a great possibility that those two conferences could be merging. So it'll be interesting, extremely interesting to see if those two conferences merge with one another. If they do merge with one another and you have 20, 24, maybe even 30 teams out west in a Pac-12, Pac-24 type of conference, does that then go to where the SEC starts adding more teams? And I don't know. And what's crazy about this is the NCAA hasn't said anything about it. And of course they haven't, right? Like, of course the NCAA hasn't said anything about the realignment and this doesn't just affect the SEC. This affects not only football, baseball, but it affects baseball, basketball, every sport across all of college athletics, and they're not going to say anything about it. Nor really can they, because like we mentioned, they're going into the Supreme Court and saying, hey, guys, yeah, you can enforce some policies, but you can't do shit. So It will be interesting. Like we talked about West Virginia in there with Graham. Do they come a part of the ACC, SEC because they are on the East Coast? They're not going to go to the West Coast, so it'll be interesting. I did see some comments. Yeah, that mosquito's getting me, boy. It's getting me, boy. Matthew and Mitchell says Blake like the different perspective from time to time, especially from an outsider. Yeah, that's what we try to do when we bring on guests. I mean, we went a couple of weeks without bringing some guests on, and then people started getting, because we're going through a coaching search and stuff like that. So Paul Batts, who lives in Austin, says Austin is buzzing, bro. They are giddy like kids on Christmas morning. Of course they are. And Paul, those guys, I mean, go look at our Twitter, man. They're just so cocky. It's unreal. Just so unreal. We didn't get man, we didn't get to the hashtag Ask Blake. So if you have some questions very quickly that we can answer, fire them in there. Craig Schilling says part of negotiations to allow Texas and Oklahoma in the SEC has to include Texas not sticking visitors and bans in the upper deck. I know that's I know we're kind of joking, but it's also kind of true, right? Like, you remember when they stuck LSU's, I mean, it's one thing to stick the visitors, right? Like, it's one thing to stick opposing teams' visitors in the nosebleed. It's something completely different when you stick the kids' parents up there. And then you shoot a cannon through a number 9 Joe Burrow jersey, and at the end of the night, he's waving to you saying, bitch, I'm from Louisiana. I mean, I know he's from Ohio, but you get what I'm saying. I mean, he's pretty much from Louisiana now, born bred. And he's waving to you. Like, say, dog, we just lay it the smack it down. But I think that he's right there. Cody Tyler says, I'm ready for Texas to try to claim DBU again. Well, they're certainly not going to claim DBU. Look, I talked about the offense. We've talked about that ad nauseum. We talked about the offensive line. We've talked about the receivers. We talked about the quarterback. Tight end, yeah, whatever. Okay? I mean, I think you're going to have Jack Besh in there. I think you're going to have Cole Taylor. They're going to mix those guys in and out of there like they probably should. But, guys, again, as I mentioned last night, and I'm going to continue to mention as we have football camp that starts, next week, in August 6th next week, I'm going to continue to mention this. I don't know if this DB room for LSU is not just the best in the country, but maybe the best that LSU's had. As I've mentioned, from a Derek Stingley, Eli Ricks, Jay Ward perspective, you got guys, Todd Harris, who has a lot of experience. Look, he's had his moments where it's not been so great. He's had some good moments. How does that transpire? J. Rad Roche says horns down. Brian Penton says, hashtag Ask Blake. LSU plays Texas in the Shiners Classic next March. In baseball, that should be fun. I hope, it will be a lot of fun. Look, in Texas, from a baseball perspective, Texas, I mean, look, they were in the College World Series last year. That would be fun in and of itself. Preston says, hashtag Ask Blake, what was the good news that you hinted at today and didn't tell all? Look, you guys know that usually when I hear something, I'm going to let you know. That's something that I'm keeping a little bit close to the vest. The reason I'm keeping that one a little close to the vest is because I do got to get some more sourcing on it. Nothing's extremely finalized with it, and I think it'll take a little bit more time for it to be finalized. What I will tell you is this, and I'm going to continue to beat this over the head. Please, in anything that you do, if you read an article from the USA Today, if you read an article from the Advocate, always remember due process will always play itself out. Now, there's some things that I'm hearing. We will see. Just as much as people and other fan bases are more than likely going to have to ask for forgiveness for the smackdown that LSU is going to lay on them this upcoming football season and all the trash that they talk since LSU went 5-5. I think that there's going to be a lot of apologies that need to be dished out, especially to Ed Orgeron, especially to those who called for his firing for things that were things that were said about him that weren't true. And when you have a situation where you run out there and you start spewing inconsistent facts, it backfires on your Rudy Poo ass. And I'm not going to scream right now. I'm not going to freak out. But let me let you all understand this. And happy birthday to Ed Orgeron, as Matthew says in here. I forgot about that because we were, again. All I will say is this. Let me just say if, not when. But if that day comes, I'm going to be an asshole so bad, and I relatively am not. You better pray to sweet baby Jesus you're watching the show that day. Gino says Cole Taylor is awesome. He's put on some weight too. Mark Allen says Blake with the walk-off. Yep. Dude. Edwin on YouTube says, I say let's go Pods, but Texas in with LSU and the Mississippi schools. Yeah, but then you'd have to do Oklahoma. If they're going to do a pod like that, I would assume that they would go Oklahoma, Texas A&M, LSU. I don't like the pods, man. I'm just being honest. I don't like the pods. Paul says your boy Brooks Cabina is now covering the Texans from the Houston Chronicle. That's like taking a job in Siberia. Well, look, he has not been a fan of LSU. He sure as hell has not been a fan of Ed Orgeron. Like he was even putting in the beginning of 2019 some really crappy articles about LSU's not going to be able to sustain this, are they? Like, maybe he will cover the Deshaun Watson stuff a little bit better than he ever covered stuff in Baton Rouge. Kyle says Cole needs to talk to Gronk. Cody Tyler says a bit off topic, but what do you think about Reggie Bush asking for his Heisman back? I mean, look, there's two things that I think about this. Do I think that Reggie Bush needs his Heisman back? Yes, because the truth of all of it is that he was the best player on the field. It's not even a question. Like, he was the best player in college football that year. However, they did cheat. I mean, there was rules that you can't buy players' houses, and you still can't do that. Like, people think with name, image, and likeness, you could do stuff like that now. You can't. You can't. I think you should give Reggie Bush his Heisman Trophy back. I think that, I mean, the truth of all of that was, too, is that his parents lived in a house. He never did. It's like the Zion thing when Zion's family went to court and Zion's family lived in a $5,000 a month house. They're paying a mortgage at like $5,000 a month. And, like we all talk about Reggie, and Reggie took the punishment for something his parents ultimately did. So let's not forget about that. Paul says, Brooks is a Texas alum. Yeah, I did know that. Jackson Carter, I've been seeing your comments in here, brother. I'm not missing you. And he also said, any update on the Will Wade case? Man, there's not really. I mean, not significant, at least not right now. I mean, at what point do they wrap this up? Jacob Samuelson says, Alabama, Auburn, Vandy, and Tennessee. What a joke. Like, this is the part of the pods that I hate. You're going to put Alabama, Auburn, Vandy, and Tennessee in the same pod? Bro. No. What's that little song? Hell no. To the no, no, no. Hell to the no. Couple more, we're going to get out of here. Edwin says, hashtag ask Blake, why would pods not be better when you can ensure all teams playing more often? Wouldn't that make the SEC even more credible? Maybe. But again, Edwin, when you're looking at this, this is not fair. Where's Jacob Samuelson's thing? Edwin, this okay? You okay with this pod right here? I mean, look, I'm not mad that Alabama. Well, yeah, I would be. You mean to tell me Auburn is, Alabama would have Auburn, Vandy, Tennessee? I mean, bro, like that. No, that ain't gonna fly with me, man. Alabama is in the same division. Like if we realign the conference, when we realign the conference, and you put Alabama and Vandy and Tennessee in the same division, same pod, bro, come on, man. Come on, man. Bro. Jackson says Blake got some soul. He definitely been to the juke joints. Come on, man. I'm from Franklin, Louisiana. One stop. Ba-bum-ba-ba-da-da-da. We ratchet. We're ratchet. Ba-bum-ba-ba-da-da-da. Bow, bow, bow. Tony Williams says, is one pod LSU, Texas A&M, Arkansas, Missouri? Again, you're going to be – fans ain't going to be happy with LSU getting A&M, Arkansas, and Mizzou. I don't know how they're going to do it. All right, one more. We got to get out of here. Edwin says, but there would be 6 more conference games to go with that. I understand that. But you and I both know that this ain't going to fly. This ain't going to fly, man. That means your every year opponent is Vandy. Alabama's every year opponent is Tennessee. And LSU's every year opponent would be Florida? No, man. No. I ain't about it. All right, guys, we'll see you tomorrow. Usually, we don't have the technical difficulties on Wednesdays like we do on Tuesdays, but we will be monitoring. All right, guys, y'all have a good night. We'll see you tomorrow. Peace out.